You are listening to the TV Obsessive podcast, brought to you by TVObsessive.com.
All right, welcome back to the TV Obsessive podcast. We're here today for episode 162. Switching over schedule a little bit for a couple of reasons, in part because we want to return to talking about The Bear, season 5. If you didn't listen already, Friday, we talked about episodes 1 through 6. Reconvening today, we're going to talk about episodes 7 and 8, the finale of The Bear overall. I'm really looking forward to that. Ryan's written on it for TVObsessive.com. You can check out his recap. If I didn't say already, again, I'm Cameron Gray, executive editor for TVObsessive.com, joined by Ryan Kirksey, writer and contributor for the site. As always, how you doing today, Ryan?
Really, really well. I'm actually really glad that we're back talking about these last two episodes. We kind of touched on this in our last episode, but s- episode 6 seemed to be a pretty serendipitous place to stop. So it's a good time for us to revisit these last two episodes here in just a little bit.
Yeah, I've gathered from poking around and reading various things that, some critics did get screeners early and they gave that only through episode 7. So,
Hmm.
I don't know, maybe we could have gone through episode 7. But I do tend to agree because, well, okay, and I realized I'm risking spoilers. There's not supposed to be spoilers at this part. Anyway, we'll talk about the bear in the latter part of the pod. As per usual, though, first talk about some other stuff we've been watching. Just a couple of news items we have on our sheet here today. Not too much. But yeah, let's start with what we're watching besides the bear this week. What do you got, Ryan?
Well, so just a simple yes or no question for you. Did you watch Life, Larry, and the Pursuit of Unhappiness yet?
Yes, I watched it last night and I was going to put it on our show sheet, but you already had it there.
Okay, so that's a trick question because the answer is yes, regardless. Because I know you've seen Curb Your Enthusiasm, so you've already seen Life, Larry, and the Fruit of Unhappiness. This was just, in my opinion, I'm glad you've actually seen this. We can discuss. This was just seemed like a regurgitation of the Curb Your Enthusiasm jokes, just set anywhere from 250 to 50 years ago. And I don't know that I've learned or saw or heard or laughed at anything new. Did you have a similar impression?
Yeah, maybe worse, but I'll ask you first. So, like, did you enjoy it?
Um, I I chuckled at the idea of Rosa Parks not wanting to spend any more time with Larry David. That was about the only part that amused me.
Okay, yeah, that might have made me crack a smile. I'm not sure, but my one sentence review slash quip would be, if you, as you say, if you've seen Curb Your Enthusiasm, if you ever thought to yourself, what if Curb Your Enthusiasm, but about U.S. history and not funny, the show might be for you. Because I didn't really think it was funny at all. I won't watch it anymore. I thought it was bad.
No, no, I'm
Um,
good.
and I mean, and also I didn't think it was informative.
No.
Um, if anything, it almost created a little niggle of a worry in my mind about misinformation or something. Like, I don't know. Do they think that people are going to check on the real history? Is that part of their idea or something like that? Um, because I don't know if people will do that. So,
Yeah.
part of me even worries that people will come away with I mean, like, it's obviously not quite intentional, but some unintentional kind of misinformation in their mind that they start thinking is part of the real history. They aren't entirely clear about that. I mean, it's like, so okay, if you already know this stuff, then it's kind of clear what's a joke and what isn't. But
Yeah.
what I'm referring to is like if you don't, like I think it's like way less informative than Drunk History, for example, which also did something on Rosa Parks
Absolutely.
at one point. So and yeah, I mean, the humor is really a retread of something like the Curb Your Enthusiasm humor. Um, but whereas that show did a really good job of sort of creating these situations, at least for me, putting me in the space of um, feeling real sympathy, if not agreement, or for Larry's character. Here it
Mm.
was just kind of like, oh, okay, what if you inserted Larry David, like, as an annoying guy into history? It's just it really didn't do it for me at all,
No,
unfortunately.
it really didn't for me either. I'm glad you brought up Drunk History. I tell anyone who's interested in watching more of this show to just go watch the several seasons of Drunk History. I mean, at least in that format, they become, as I understand it, I mean, subject matter experts about what they are going to be talking about, and then just get them drunk and have them, repeat this and act this out. So at least you do learn something in that in a humorous way. So no, I just don't think I'll be continuing here.
Yeah, or I always got the impression in Drunk's history that they all already kind of are, like it just happens to be the case that you have this like niche interest in this bit of
Yes.
history and you know a ton about it because it
Yeah.
fascinates you. And then I'm going to get you drunk and have you talk about it. Where like that's more entertaining than this. So,
Yes.
um, speaking of HBO, I wanted to hit up briefly on House of the Dragon. I know we talked about it last week. There's also something Ryan's been writing on for TVObscast.com, so I encourage people to go check out his articles, and they'll be there each week. But I just wanted to say, I guess, briefly that for me, and I don't know if this is going to apply to people listening, so I want to say something. We're into season three, you know, and that's a decent chunk of time that you've put in by the time you've gotten to season three, episode two. But at least by this point, I'm in pretty fully. And I don't know if it quite happened before this point. So like I'm like kind of trying to make the argument that it's worth the time. But at the same time, it can be annoying when people are like, well, maybe you don't like it at first, but keep going and you finally will
Mm.
after you've watched 20 episodes. But I don't know. I just kind of wanted to put it out there because I imagine there are some who like watch the first season and quit, for example. I mean, I know
Yeah.
I've talked to people in my life who that applies to, for example.
It's interesting you say that. I would say normally, not always, but normally, you and I see, sort of ebb and flow, but the reviews, the opinions often tend to, go one way or the other when you see an episode or a show or a season. I have seen things all over the map for these first two episodes. I mean, for people saying, "Oh, this show is now only for the diehards." Like, if you're not fully into the universe, then this is not for you. To, oh wow, look at this. Look at all that it can be. Game of Thrones is back. I've just seen disparate opinions about this season. I have certainly some things I have loved about it, some things that I would critique about it. I'm certainly bought in regardless of what happens. But it's been interesting to see the. I think there was a long path, or maybe a tough path ahead after the end of season two. I seem to have gotten a long way there, maybe halfway there. But I'm generally, even though I was going to be there already, I've generally bought back in.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I wonder about how much of a split it is. Well, this is like the opposite of what you just said, though. So I don't know in terms of the differing experiences between those who have read the source material and those who haven't, right? My
Yeah.
understanding is it's based on, Fire and Blood, and it's relatively short kind of history sort of thing. I haven't read it, right? I know you have.
Mhm.
But speaking from the perspective personally of someone who hasn't read it, and particularly with this episode, um, I found myself sitting here watching it and going like, wait, is this really going to happen? And but by the time that it ends, like we're two episodes into the season, you know, and like despite my about little quip, yeah, I mean about like, oh well, so that's a lot of dating on at 14, but it's like obviously a lot of other stuff's going to happen, and I have no
Yeah.
idea what it is. So
Yeah. Yeah.
like from my perspective, it's like, oh, I'm like super intrigued and hooked. If you're going to have this happening in the second episode of the third season, I know there's also a whole fourth season planned.
Hmm.
That I'm in the space of like, wow, I can just like hardly predict where it might go. And also there's a way in which some of the stuff from season one and probably season two also, I'm now looking at and more appreciating like, okay, like understand like why they did this in terms of having that background to the
Yeah.
characters and the relationships and so on. Because, I think one of the issues, especially with season one in particular, might have been feeling like it wasn't super great television as a
Hmm.
compelling
Yeah.
narrative that carries forward episode to episode. And that like changed the actors at one point and all of that.
Yeah.
But so I don't know. That's where I'm at with it is looking back, thinking like, okay, well, I understand it better. I think I appreciate the overall plan for the show more.
Yeah.
And then narratively, where we're at now, I feel like, oh, you know, so yeah, again, like this feeling like, well, things aren't over, but I have no idea what's going to happen next. And yeah, I'm really pretty hooked.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up season one. I think this show had to start off on the back foot because of what you talked about. Three separate time jumps in 10 episodes, two different introductions of characters, some of which completely changed from one episode to the next. Others stayed the same, while others aged up later on in the season, and so it suffered from that, I think, and really had a lot of work to do to get everybody reoriented. I think they've largely gotten there at this point.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe you could have done it another way. You could have started it all and like fed in flashbacks or something, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know that that would have been better anyway. Hopefully, people are watching House of the Dragon or not. The other thing I would say, is like, look, so if you were someone who checked out season one and kind of just felt like, oh, this is too boring or whatever, I'm not really into it and gave up, and the end of Game of Thrones was bad or whatever, and was like,
Yeah.
try to give it a chance, but it's not really okay. Maybe give it another chance. If your objection was more like moralistic, yeah, well, that okay, just
Yeah. Yeah.
not for you, not for you. I'm thinking, well, because in part I'm thinking about that because Timothy Clarendon wrote season one for TVObscast.com, and I appreciate his work on it, and his articles are pretty good and all of that. But at the end of season one, he definitely had something along the lines of like moral objections to some of the stuff. And it's
Yes.
like, okay, Tim,
Yes.
I'm not telling Tim just to like give it another shot, but others, perhaps I am. Anyhow, just a couple of news items. Let's start with yours. So Millie Bobby Brown and David Harbour are going to reunite for a spy drama on Netflix. Thoughts here?
Yeah, so this is interesting. Only in the fact, I mean, the subject sounds, compelling, and we'll talk about that in a second. But if you recall, during the basically the Stranger Things final season press tour, there were all these stories that came out, a lot from the UK about this more than an estranged relationship between David Harbour and Millie Bobby Brown, but like someone claiming there was some assaults and there was these fights on set and that they were not speaking to each other and all these stories that come out. There was some sort of PR done with this, some handling and statements put out by both of them saying everything's fine, we're a family. Sometimes families disagree, et cetera, et cetera. And so now here we are 6 or 7 months later. Out of that, Millie Bobby Brown, David Harbour will reunite on Netflix in a role that will put David Harbour as the father of Millie Bobby Brown. So, just sort of interesting parallels there. So all in terms of their relationship must be well, and now they're going to come together for a spy drama about a former disgraced FBI agent played by David Harbour. So, will this separate itself from any other spy drama? I don't know. Just the casting just piqued my interest a little bit.
Yeah, it is interesting because you recall these stories or rumors or what have you. I mean, and who knows? I mean, because as you say, I
Yeah.
recall reading things that was more along the lines of maybe of harassment or something, or I don't know. There were suggestions really of
Yes.
like problematic tensions occurring, and um, I hope that wasn't true. I guess because human relationships are complicated and everything. But regardless of what happened in the past, they are going to work together on this series. It definitely seems like they're saying that whatever that reporting was about was at least overblown. And
Yeah.
I don't know. To take it more to the level of thinking about this TV show they're going to do. All right, spy drama, so on and so forth. Maybe it sounds like maybe it'd be pretty entertaining. Maybe it'll be compelling, whatever. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily sound like something that's going to stand out in my mind, but maybe it will if it's
Yeah.
really good or something. I don't know how I feel actually about this sort of thing, though. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on this front, pairing them not just in a new show together, but as father-daughter, which was
Mm.
like structurally speaking what they were in Stranger Things. I don't know. Does that worry you at all?
Yeah, yeah. It's like I guess I have 10 years of this dynamic in my mind of who they were and the relationship that they built and how he was trying to protect her and how she was trying to become her own person and all this background history of them together in that same dynamic. Yeah, just putting them together again, it seems like they're estranged. Yeah, I'm not. It reminds me of this sort of goes around on social media from time to time when this would be for those that have seen Game of Thrones when the actors who played Theon Greyjoy and Ramsay Bolton reunited for another show later on where they were like best friends. It was like really weird. So I don't know. We'll have to see. I'm not so sure that I'll put this on the list, but I just found it odd that yeah they're going to essentially play the same roles in this modern spy drama.
Yeah, and it's like maybe it'll be fine. I mean, I guess the question is like, will we be able to sufficiently get over or kind of forget
Yeah,
their relationship in Stranger Things? And I have a little bit of a worry there for me myself personally, even if
yeah,
the show's good, will I be able to get over that? Because it's a little different even from the example you mentioned, because they're in a different context or whatever, and so on and so on. Like this feels my worry is more like, okay, what if we created a buddy cop drama starring David Duchovny and Gillian Anderson? No paranormal activity, no none of that stuff at all, though. It's just a buddy cop drama. You know what I mean? And, like that's kind of what my worry is. Like, will I be able to watch this without thinking of their characters in Stranger Things
yes,
sufficiently? Um,
exactly.
and maybe I was also thinking like I actually haven't seen Millie Bobby Brown in that much besides Stranger Things. She was in Enola Holmes, right? I never watched
Yeah,
that.
few seasons, but
Um,
no, I've never seen that.
you didn't check it? You didn't watch it? So I don't know. I know
No.
she's done some other stuff, but it's also for me, maybe part of this is that she's unfairly, in my mind, typecast a little bit at 11 as 11, and I need to see her in some other stuff to break out of that, and hopefully that'll work. But
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
uh to make a segue here that I'm sure fans of Enola Holmes won't like. I'm good at this story. I put this on here just because I thought this was odd, and I had to look into it actually to understand what was going on. And we didn't have a lot to talk about, so I said, okay, let's go ahead and talk about it briefly on the podcast. Carl Lynch has been sentenced to 30 months for defrauding Netflix. And part of why this caught my attention is all the headlines are so straightforward. I mean, like, yeah, he's been convicted, but still, all of the headlines I was seeing were just like, filmmaker who scammed Netflix out of millions gets sent, like not at all, no nuance, Um, and he was behind 47 Ronin, and he got a bunch of money to work on this. It was supposed to be a TV series, so it's in our wheelhouse in that front, right? Sci-fi TV series. Did you read this article, Ryan? Because once I read the details, I was like, oh, okay.
I have so this 3 or 4 paragraph thing that you sent over. I have read this. I have to admit I was not familiar with this story before I did. So I've not, gone into the links and the depths and the,
Okay.
everything that is involved in this. But I'm just sort of fascinated by what actually happened here and how Netflix got involved in this and what they've been doing to try to climb back out of it.
Okay, so I'll tell you because we won't tell our listeners anyway, if people haven't read the story. I felt like I had to dig in because I just wanted to know because, it's like, okay, well, you quote scammed Netflix. Well, it's like, I mean, there are lots of instances where, say, Netflix or someone else gives someone millions of dollars to make a TV show and like it doesn't happen,
Yeah.
it doesn't work out. So this was at least originally kind of along those lines, like they were going over budget and all of that, and the show wasn't getting completed or whatever. But my understanding is the particular thing that he's now been sentenced for, right? He's convicted and sentenced. Apparently, the 30 month is some leniency because his buddy Keanu Reeves asked for it in terms of appealing to mental health issues and things like this. Um, but this was the bit. If you look at the article I posted, which is from AD Club, I'll put it in our show notes. I'm reading along, I'm like, but like what exactly? Because it's one thing to take the money and then not produce the TV show. That happens all the time in certain ways, right? But then there's this bit where instead of they gave him $11 million to finish after he'd gone over budget. And apparently, instead of completing the show, he bought a bunch of Dogecoin, multiple Rolls Royces, and a horsehair bed that he had to return because he was allergic to it. It was like, okay, all right, you know, fair. It's fair. It sounds fair. Like you're gonna say he defrauded Netflix. Like because basically he took this money that he was supposed to use to make the show and instead bought Dogecoin and
Yeah, I
bars
mean,
and horse
yeah, to
airbag.
to to your point, yes. The money will be distributed frequently for things like this, but it's, you pay for writers and you pay for sets and you pay for production design and you pay for, catering and trailers and all kinds of things. But yeah, to just have the creator take the money and buy Ferraris and Royces, that's a new one for me.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, okay, no, there really isn't much nuance here when it comes down to it. So I don't know. I don't know if this means for his career. There are fans of his previous work out there. I mean, like presumably this TV series he was supposed to make is just dead.
Yeah, yeah.
But and he's going to go to prison for 30 months. Again, he got some leniency because of they made the argument that, well, mental health struggles were playing a role here, like, and maybe
Yeah.
maybe other stuff in terms of like side effects of medication he was on, and who knows or whatever. And like, I don't know, maybe I'll be, sympathetic on that front. I had to look into the details when I got to the horsehair bed in British. I was like, oh, all right, all right. And then he had to return. So this guy bought a horsehair bed and apparently didn't know he was allergic to horsehair until after he got the bed.
Exactly.
So,
Oh,
anyhow,
this is a funny story. That
um,
falls in the category of never heard that one before.
yeah, apologies to Carl Ridge if you hear this and we're laughing. We're not trying to laugh at you in a mean way necessarily, but you did defraud Netflix. Um, Speaking of humor, last thing I wanted to mention, we talked about this in the podcast before, and it's been a couple of months at this point, but I've definitely been following the story as best I can about the Onion acquiring InfoWars.
Hmm.
Um, and Okay, so the update is, I mean, I think there's still some stuff in the courts that's not fully worked out, but Ben Collins and the others, the Onion, have basically said, look, we're not waiting anymore. We're going to move forward. And so the announcement is that this Thursday, be in what, 2 days from when we're recording this, they're launching it. And it's going to be on YouTube and other places, Twitch and whatever else. I don't know exactly. Um, and they're going to have a running series, a couple of different running series, but it sounds like what they're going to start out with is going to involve, to some degree, Tim Heidecker and his Alex Jones impersonation. But they have further plans moving into the future to kind of broaden it out as a space for comedy associated with the Onion. And I don't know,
Yeah.
Ryan, did you have a chance to look at this interview that I put on our sheet here, or other thoughts about
Yeah,
this?
not only did I read the interview because I've I guess find myself sort of lacking in terms of the information that I knew about, what this agreement was and what's going to start and what's going to happen. So I read this interview and also found myself watching most of the 18-minute InfoWars Chief Issues Emergency Announcement
Oh,
video.
yes. Oh,
And
yes.
the guy doing his Alex Jones impression and man, Tim Heidecker, I don't know if that's his normal voice or if he's going to have to do that for a 30 minutes straight on a
Well,
an episode, but that made me want to watch more of these. That's what I'll say.
it's definitely not his normal voice if you aren't really familiar with Tim Heidecker from other places. But it's a spot on impression, and I don't even know
Yeah,
like how his throat can handle that. Like it's
exactly.
like it's the same kind of question occurring to me when I listen to like a death metal band or something. I'm like, man, how's your
Yeah,
throat hold up through all that? But yeah, that emergency broadcast was great, and that was at this point it was in May. I think it was early May.
yeah,
Um, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do here because already when I watched that, something started, an idea kind of started percolating in my mind, which would be a potential article idea. And I have no idea if I'll write this because it depends what they do from here. But I started thinking about this as like the Colbert Report for our times or something like that.
yeah,
And I don't know. I don't know if that'll hold up. But definitely enjoyed that emergency broadcast a lot. I'm looking forward to see what they do. And they seem to know, though, that, well, man, there's only so much run you can get out of that sort of thing. So I also found this comment in the interview. Um, an AV Club interview. Man, I meant to look into this. I don't think the AV Club and the Onion are the same company anymore, but maybe, I don't know. Do your own research. Um, they used to be the same company. I know that, but I don't think they are anymore. Um, but Oh, the way that Ben Collins says something about feeling like the comedy space, at least particularly in terms of like political comedy, is just only what do you think he calls roast humor? Um, which if I read that, well, how I interpret that, I think he's including like the stuff that goes on in the late night shows and things like that. In terms of the way in which it's kind of like, hey, look at this idiot, haha, or whatever.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and they want to do something else. And
Yes.
that I think that's potentially really exciting because if I take that the way I take that point, I think I agree. If you think about the space, it is there's not a lot of space for other types of humor, at least in terms of politics and social commentary. So if they're going to ultimately use InfoWars to open up, I don't know what, some like more like alt comedy space. It's interesting. Tim Heidecker is an interesting character or figure to be involved here. You go back to, Tim and Eric and all that. And um anyway, just really kind of
Yeah.
curious about what's to come and excited about it. And that the Sandy Hook people will ultimately get some money. That's part of this. At least
That's
that's
right.
part of the plan.
That's what that is must be said and important to note. And I also appreciate your point about sort of the comparison to the Colbert Report. Colbert Report obviously being very much a product of its time and sort of a reflection of Bush era diplomacy and foreign policy, and this could really be a reflection of what we're seeing or what we have seen perhaps over the last 5 to 6 years. So I like sort of that thinking about it being a reflection like that was back 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, and if they can pull it off, and I felt like the emergency broadcast made me think that, and they were pulling it off, because I would have been tempted to say almost like you can't do that, insofar as what Colbert did on the Colbert Report was kind of like take what was reality and dial it up to 11 to where it became absurd, and finally
Yes.
just and you might be tempted to look at our present political reality and say, well, it's already so absurd. How could you possibly do that? But I kind of felt like in the emergency broadcast, at least, he was managing to do that, like the turn your piss into gold, all this kind of stuff. Anyway, I don't know. Looking forward to see what they do. Coming up here, I'll be tuning in on Thursday night to see what that's all about. And then I think there's also something planned on Friday. Um, so potentially check back in on it later. All right, though. You ready to talk about the Bear? Finale of the Bear?
Yes, let's do it. Let's finish it up.
All right, we're up to the end, episodes 7 and 8 of season 5 of the Bear, the final season. Caramel and the original Beef of Chicagoland. Spoilers will be on the table here for absolutely everything in the Bear through its series finale. We'll put a little bit of music in here and be back with you in about 10 seconds.
Okay, we're here to talk about The Bear, Season 5, final season, episodes 7 and 8, Caramel and the Original Beef of Chicagoland. In these two episodes, dinner service on the chaotic day at the Bear continues, and the staff tries to figure out how to accommodate late diners, full reservations, because Richie didn't cancel any, and a quickly dwindling food supply. The supposed Michelin star raider arrives with Chicago weatherman Tom Skilling, and they fall in love with their food, their wine, and Neil Fack's stories about his tattoos. Marcus's father also arrives for dinner at the restaurant. When Carmy drops the Starman's plate of lamb, they pivot to Sid's cola braised short ribs which does impress the diners. After more chaos and creativity, the staff is able to pull off a very successful service. Outside the restaurant, Uncle Jimmy and Computer agree that Ibrahim's franchise proposal is the best way to save the restaurant. The very next day, Sugar's happy with how the money is looking. Richie is invited to Japan for a hospitality conference. Jimmy tells Carmy about the franchise idea, and Tina is able to go back to the market to restock the food. Carmy finally takes a call from Peter Clark at Michelin and learns that they earn not one but 2 stars for the restaurant. He's able to share the news and celebrate with Sid. Some weeks later, Luca returns to Copenhagen. Ibrahim begins working on the franchising. Tina takes over as CDC, and Carmy goes to an interview for an internship at an architectural firm where he's able to convey all that the bear meant to him. At the end, all of the Bear staff and extended family, including Carmy and Claire, gather for a birthday party for Richie's daughter. First, some comments about episode 7 was actually the end of the Bear, and that's how people will remember it. There are some interesting things that we need to discuss in episode 8. Maybe that's why critics only got first 7 episodes in their package. Are you satisfied more with the ending of 7, or do you think we needed 8? Where should we begin with these 2 episodes?
Well, I guess I think we needed 8. I get the idea that I've seen some refer to it even as more of an epilogue than
Yeah.
conclusion, but I don't know. I don't know if I fully agree with that either. Like, could it have ended after episode 7? sure, and then I don't
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
fill in the gaps. But I don't think it's that kind of show. That relates in part to a criticism I do have. We'll get to here at some point, I think. Um, but at the same time, I think that the kind of closure that episode 8 is aiming to provide is something that we expected from this show. And if that episode
Mm,
hadn't been there, I think a lot of people would have been complaining about it ending after episode 7. Although I could take the point in terms of the structure of the television that, it kind of could have, and the story was meaningfully over. We at least wanted that kind of denouement. We wanted the closure and the resolution of not just the plot, but sort of the character arcs and so on. I think. What do you think?
If if we did not have eight, and instead of that, we had, you know, we saw Carmi kept getting a call from someone at Michelin, let's say, and let's say he never answered the call. And so we're left to wonder what happened. How would you have felt about that as an ending? Did you need to know whether or not they earned a Michelin star for this to be a satisfying conclusion to the series?
No, I didn't really care about that.
Okay,
I
okay.
mean, so like if you're suggesting, well, the thing is, his phone says unknown caller, like you don't know who it is, and I don't even
Mhm.
know that I think that Carmi knew who it was.
I don't
You
think so.
know, it's I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm risking a tangent or whatever. I don't know about you, but if I get a phone on my, if I get a call on my cell phone that says unknown caller, like I don't answer it. You know what I
Exactly.
mean?
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
you maybe leave a voicemail, and then like maybe I'll listen to the voicemail, and
Yeah, if Carmi got a voicemail, this is Michelin, call us back, and then we never heard it. Just I don't know. There's
yeah,
certainly some
like
things about eight, about eight that we need to talk about, which I know that we will. But in terms of what had to be resolved in eight, I think the star and perhaps Claire were the only two things I was like, okay, I can see why you're doing it in this, why you have this episode.
oh, see, I meaningfully disagree because like it's in 8 that we get Carmi agreeing to Abraham's franchise idea, right?
Okay. Okay.
It's in 8 that we get Richie being invited to Japan and having to confront his fear of flying because he's never flown before, but like almost everything else in the bear, of course, that's symbolic of his anxiety in general about his life and a sense of purpose or lack thereof, and fear about actually going after things. Like I'm tempted to say the old Richie we met at the beginning of season 1 wouldn't have gone
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
Japan. Um, and with the other characters, it was maybe a little bit more perfunctory. I think we already talked last time about how, there's kind of a meaningful way in which Tina's arc has already been resolved, and maybe almost was a while ago. All right, now she's officially become chef de cuisine. We're just like
Mhm.
we're what's the word I want? It's like we're officially recognizing something that was already there, which is also how the scene
Yeah.
plays when Sid gives her the title, right? It's like you're already
Yeah.
doing the job. I'm just making it official. But it's still nice to have that made official. I know that happened before episode 8. The resolution, such as it is, of the stuff between Marcus and his father, which of course isn't tied up with a neat bow, but I think it's sufficient, at least in terms of
Yeah.
saying, Marcus has gotten to the point where he's willing to talk to the guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so, I mean, I think a lot of this stuff that happened in episode 8, it feels necessary for me to at least kind of round out the character arcs. And you couldn't have shoved it into episode 7 somehow, because episode 7 is all about the service.
Yeah. 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 I just wonder, and maybe I am, I know we're talking about, maybe I'm just, I'm getting anchored down by some of my thoughts on Carmi's presence in episode 8. But it just seems like there was
Oh,
a sense of them coming together, understanding the family, understanding their place and what it takes or what it means to get something done like they did. And so I certainly enjoyed eight. I enjoyed eight. I enjoyed the resolutions we got. I enjoyed the story that we were told. Yeah, just I think just an interesting note that it is probably just best called an epilogue, as you put it.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, all right, so let's go to more. I mean, you already kind of started on the on negative from you, but I somewhat disagree. So maybe now we'll flip it around and come with a negative from me that you'll disagree with. Maybe you'll disagree with that, or maybe you'll agree. But I don't know. I read your recap, so you should check out Ryan's article on this on TVObscast.com. I encourage you to do so. Of course, it's the best article that's available anywhere. But I'm going to shout out Catherine Van Arendonk's article on Vulture, um, which. Sorry, the slug here is not the name of the article. The article is called "The Bear Just Couldn't Help Itself," I believe. Um, but I'm calling this out because, well, one, I mean, I think it's really good and she's really well written and
Yeah.
all that. But she also kind of hits the nail on the head of something that I was already feeling, and I love that experience of sort of saying, okay, well, this is something I already was thinking in a more nebulous way and have someone really articulate it well. But in particular, I guess the thing I want to talk about is that scene with Carmi, because I
Hmm.
mentioned the resolution of the character arcs, and I think I said last time we were talking on the podcast about the bear that, well, yeah, it's a show about the restaurant, but it's also the show about Carmi, who is the bear. And of all the character arcs, I am the least satisfied with Carmi's resolution here. And this is in the article, but when she posted on Blue Sky, Catherine Van Dog says, like, if you read this, if you want to see which part of the finale, maybe go. And I agree. It
Yeah.
was that scene.
Yeah.
It was that interview where I went. Pff. Um, I don't know how did that land for you? All the stuff where like they leave it kind of you don't entirely know what's going on at first exactly with Stevie and so on, and what exactly is this meeting about, and what is he trying to
Yeah.
do? And then they go through this whole thing. Um, with the reveal being apparently he's applying for an architectural internship. How did this land for you, Ryan?
Yeah, I think interestingly, you were probably reading this piece about the same time I was listening to the podcast that Catherine and Alan Sepinwall have together,
Oh,
and
interesting.
they were talking about this very same topic. Like she conveys many of these same ideas that's in this piece and Vulture on their podcast. So I was kind of thinking along these same lines already, and yeah, I think that. So the idea to hide the ball here of what Carmi is there to do or what he's there to interview for. I mean, I think many of us were maybe thinking the same thing. You're thinking like, oh, he's gonna, I don't know, do a Anthony Bourdain book. Maybe he's gonna do a, consult. Maybe he's going to get a loan to get his own restaurant. Something that allows him to focus his energies on where his talents are. But to say that he's going to apply for it, what 30 years old or whatever he is at an architectural firm for an internship when he has no background, no college degree, no training, no sense of anything other than Stevie knows these people. I just was quite floored that that was the decision. That I mean, you find out 4 minutes before the end of this series that that's where they went.
Yeah, I almost wish we were on. Well, maybe I don't wish we were on videos. I mean, with this is audio only. If you had the video, just you see as Brian was talking, I was like shaking my head and rolling my eyes. Yeah. As it was unfolding, I found myself thinking that he was going to be pitching a book, and
Yes,
where I've
yes,
landed is that's what they should have done because then
I
you
think
could say,
so.
yeah, because then you could say, okay, well, I mean, it would make some sense. He's a creative guy or whatever. He's had all these experiences. It would also tie into what Stevie was saying, you know what I mean? In terms of like, this is a book not just about cooking, but your life and in a certain
Mhm.
way, like a kind of memoir sort of thing or whatever. And
Yeah.
further, we all know that you don't have to be a good writer in order to quote, write a book. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
and Stevie tells him, lead with trauma. Talk to him
yeah.
about that. That's what sells. It's like, what architecture firm is going to care about that when you're applying for an internship?
Yeah, so it's like, look, I'm not an architect, but I can only imagine how someone who is would have felt about this scene because I know enough about the field to think like, what, this is ridiculous. You have no training. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
this is like a 4-year
Right.
college degree in order to go into
Yes.
architecture. There's a lot of math involved. It's
Yeah.
very a lot of it's very boring in a meaningful way. You know what I mean? I mean, maybe it's not boring if you're really into it, but so
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
so. So it's like thematically, I can see where the idea came from about how, um, you know, he has this kind of creativity that he also wants to express in something practical
Yeah.
with food, and architecture is sort of like that. But if anything, I would argue that architecture is actually like that to the degree that if Carmi actually did commit himself to becoming really good at it, he'd be back in the same place with all the same problems.
Yes, I agree. Perhaps he could get there creatively, he can get there instinctively, he could get there emotionally. But yeah, where what his personality sort of drives him to this obsessiveness, and yeah, would have gotten him there. I think it was the
It's
line
bad.
where he said, "I like to draw," and I was like, "What?" That's so does every 8-year-old. That doesn't mean that they can get an internship at an architecture firm.
They make it sound like he's going to be able to just draw nifty buildings and it'll be cool and fun. And it's like, I'm sorry,
Yes,
that's not what
no,
this actually is. You know what I mean? So that's why I do think that if the idea had been in pitching a book, because again, look, as much as you and I are writers and we might want to get into stuff about the craft and appreciate the skill and expertise of being a good writer and all of that, again, we all know you don't have to be a good writer to quote write a book. We know
that's right.
everyone knows at this point, right? Like you put the idea, maybe you have a ghostwriter, or it's a matter of working closely with an editor or whatever. Like all sorts of people are technically writing books. I keep doing scare quotes so people can't see how it, but it's like, but yeah, that's my main complaint. Architecture is not like that. Now, my other complaint about the scene, because like I think this is the worst scene in the whole show, um, is that this is where I wanted to shout out Catherine Van in particular. It displays all the faults of the bear when the bear's at its worst, of sort
Mm-hmm.
of like not trusting us to get how things are symbolic and so on and so forth, and saying, no, we need to have this scene where he literally spells it out for you.
Yeah.
And insofar as this was not the climax, but meant to be like the resolution of his character arc,
Mm,
I found it immensely boring because
yeah.
he was telling me a bunch of stuff I already knew. Um, and if I was there, I think your name's Sue. If I was interviewing you for an architectural internship, I was like, well, that's really interesting. Like, maybe go do something else. Like, I wouldn't hire him.
Sounds like you really found your place at this restaurant. Maybe you should go back there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So like, it makes some sense to me that Carmi like gets to this place where he realized that he can't do it. Although it is odd because there is a meaningful way in which I do think that episode 7 kind of shows that he can do it. I
Yes.
mean,
Yes.
it's a really significant moment, I think, when he drops the lamb. Not so much because of the fact that he made a mistake, but of the way that everyone is there to support him in light of that. And that he's not in charge, but
Mm-hmm.
is now like allowed to be someone who can make a mistake, because of course we all make
Yeah.
mistakes, but he's always felt like he cannot make any mistakes, and
Yes.
that's part of his whole
Yes.
damage, right?
I think that's what makes the combination of 7, 8 so striking together is that, yes, he may have realized after all these years, especially with the experience of the Joel McHale character as his head chef, that he gets to this last service and he has learned at least somewhat to defer, learn to let someone take control, learn to let others help him when some mistake is made. Also learned that he can be perhaps the most creative mind in the kitchen when they have to pivot, when they have to come up with something new, when they need to get innovative. He can still pull those tricks out of his bag, and that maybe this is what I should be doing with the right people, but actually now I'm going to go and try to get an internship somewhere else. So just putting the two things together just really was pretty shocking to me.
Yeah, I really didn't think that worked. I feel like either he should have decided to stay at the restaurant um,
Hmm.
as as just a cook in the kitchen,
Yep. Yep.
um, and or I mean, I kind of like the idea. I think it could have largely been the same as what they did, and just have him pitching a book idea instead of this architecture thing, um, and maybe tweak the monologue a little bit. But even if you don't,
Yep.
it would at least make more sense for him to say, I've had all of this experience, and this is what it's been like, and there's trauma, and but here's how like I've learned how to live through this recent experience or whatever, if you're pitching a book idea, because it's like, okay, well,
Yeah.
that kind of sounds like a book I might want to read. Or you could even start
Exactly.
playing with meta ideas like, oh, well, it's actually Carmi's diegetic book that is the basis for the Bear the TV series. Like there's all
Yeah.
sorts of ways in which I think that would have worked. But this architecture stuff, anyway, we've belabored the point. We've driven it into the ground, so we'll move on. Um,
To be fair, I think this is what most people will be talking slash writing about. So I think it's worth giving it its time.
Yeah, I agree. But there's some other stuff to hit on, and most of it I did enjoy. I hit on some things briefly earlier. Let's see. Let me run through the characters, I guess. I said some things about Richie briefly. Is there more to say about Richie? I mean, I do think that, like, man, if you take nothing else from this show positively, buried in these 5 seasons is a really compelling story about Richie. And if you think about Richie, if you were, you could almost tease it out and make a feature length film about Richie as the main character.
Hmm.
I don't know. Further thoughts on Richie?
Yeah, yeah, I do have a lot of thoughts, and I tend to agree with just bringing up that other podcast with Stephen Wall and Catherine here. They seem to intimate that in the end, this became a show about Richie. He's the final scene. He's the one that has maybe the most complete and satisfactory arc. We don't know Carmi's outcome, where he is, what he's doing. Is he happy? But we see that with Richie, and in so many ways, I think that from where he was in a sort of over here in a family that accepted him, but always felt like, do I belong? Do I have something? Do I have purpose? He really found it. And I think, yeah, just the strongest story in the entire show.
Yeah. And they close with it, so they know it. But it is structured a little odd because I do think I just have to imagine from the beginning, from the conception of the series, that part of the idea would be that the title plays in that double register, that's about the bear, the restaurant, but it's about the bear Carmi. And so yeah, if it ends up feeling like it's more a show about Richie, I don't know, is that a success? At least
Yeah,
in terms of
yeah.
Richie, I think it all works. I did see someone complaining about it in a way that I'll just mention, but I don't want to belabor this kind of complaint. Like, well, could the restaurant? Okay, I could get that the restaurant would keep operating without Richie, but can they really get by without Richie and without Jess and without
I
Car?
was going to
Like,
bring it the same point.
and it's like, all right, fair enough, but like, whatever. It's nice that Jess is there. It's great that this relationship seems to be working out. Um, on that front, let's circle back around to at least one more thing about Carmi, which is Claire. And I might
Yeah.
also have a complaint here, I guess. Maybe it's fine, but the thought here I want to be sure to work in is actually more about Claire, because let me say this, Ryan, I wrote a piece on
Hmm.
TVObscast.com about Claire after season 2. It was right after her character was introduced and all
Yep.
of that. I think that's what it was. Because there were some people out there who were kind of like questioning the character, and people who were arguing that she's like a manic pixie dream girl kind of thing or whatever,
Mm.
and I wanted to push back against all that, and that's why I did that article. You can go find it if you want to read it. And now we've hit the end of season 5, and I feel like, okay, Claire's a manic pixie dream girl in the narrative. But what I want to say is I think that the overall narrative of the bear totally failed her character, if not sort
Mm.
of betrayed it in terms of how she factored into the story, because she just kind of disappears. And then, like, I would have preferred if she had not been there at the end,
Yeah.
even because it's like she largely disappeared and then she's just there at the end because she's just kind of like
I think that's
I don't know.
largely what Carmi's arc deserved because we don't know where he is. We don't know what he's doing. We have very little clues of sort of what happened to him months later. And but except for this one piece where it seems like, I guess there's not 100% clear evidence, but it seems like Carmen and Claire are there together. And that
Yeah.
part has been resolved. Is it resolved because he's happy? Is it resolved because he found some satisfaction somewhere? Is it resolved because Claire changed? But just her missing for so long and then being brought back in this, oh, we're gonna, sort of show where everyone is back together in this moment seemed a little shallow in terms of where they could have taken her should he. And again, there may have been scheduling issues, who knows what it is, but if she had been there all along or not been there at all.
Yeah, to be clear, what I actually want the show to have done is more Claire. But
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
fact that she totally fell out of things so thoroughly, and then they just her in that final scene, yeah, didn't do it
Yep.
for me. I mean, like, okay, I guess it's nice that she's there, but I don't know if you're familiar with the trope, the manic pixie dream girl. I guess maybe I don't feel like she is that still at the end of the day because that's kind of meant as like a figure that's like almost like saving the male protagonist or something like that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's definitely a way in which I do feel like the character of Claire was more complex and ended up getting kind of flattened out to just a side character in Carmi's story. And that's my
Yeah.
criticism at the end of the day. A little disappointed on that front. Um, we do get a Rob Reiner tribute, and I've seen out there that they're saying this was intentional. You want to talk about this more? He doesn't appear, but as I said last time, Albert's sort of in the story anyway, on as the unheard other side of phone calls.
Yeah, it seems like we've had Ibrahim talking to Albert a couple of times in the last two episodes or throughout the season, and just that as they, apparently could not film something with him before his unfortunate passing, just to have, Ibrahim with a very subtle line delivery of "as you wish" from the Princess Bride. I just thought, I mean, I wrote this. I got choked up when
Yeah,
I heard it. Frankly, I was like, oh my gosh, it just hit so many notes about this show, these characters, Rob Reiner, my history with that, being a kid, seeing that movie, just kind of hit all the right notes in just a matter of what, 5 seconds.
yeah, it was good. It was great. And again, I've seen things where it was like basically they've confirmed the, store or whoever confirmed that that was intentional. So we thought of the Princess Bride there, that they were doing that intentionally. Uh, Damn shame that Rob Reiner couldn't be in this season. Presumably
Yeah.
people know why, because he was murdered. Um, and anyway, sorry for being a bummer, but he was there, and it's nice that they found a way to do that and so on. I think they handled it well. Didn't have a lot of
Yeah.
options given how he is in the story. Um, let's see. Other things you want to hit on before I'll take you, the last thing that you have here, we'll talk about it in terms of ranking the seasons. You got me
Yeah.
thinking about that, so I'm prepared to talk about that. Anything else you want to hit on first? Have we covered all the
Let
characters
me
sufficiently?
let me ask you a Sid question, and I brought this up in my
Yeah,
piece as well, which, go ahead and read this. I'm curious your thoughts on it. So they get 2 stars, which is, you know,
yeah,
more than they ever hoped for, right? They thought they were going to get them based on this Starman who was there at this service in episode 7. That clearly was not the case. That was just some random guy there with a real life Chicago weatherman Tom Skilling, who apparently everyone adores in Chicago. You can go read a lot about him. But this is not the service that earned them the stars. It was the service from season 3 where there was sort of an anonymous man there who has great food, witnesses Richie and the team putting together a winter sort of snow winter wonderland for this family and getting them dessert outside. Was very impressed by all of that, but that means it's not Sid's dish, it's not Sid's leadership, it's not Sid that got them the Michelin star. It's Carmi's running of the kitchen. It's Carmi's chaos menu. It's what, sort of a thing that Sid always butted heads with Carmi against. So, thoughts on does this demotivate Sid? Is this, something that sort of puts a roadblock in front of her? How does she feel about these, stars, knowing that it wasn't really her that got them?
I mean, I think that's another thing that's a little bit bumpy, and yeah, maybe we're thinking through a bit. In terms of the question you asked, one, I'm glad you asked it because we should talk about Sid more because look, we were just kind of making the argument maybe this is Richie's show. You could make the argument maybe it's maybe Sid's the main character
Yeah.
for long stretches anyway, or maybe even overall. But I don't think that at a character level she's going to quite feel that way. You
Yeah.
know, the accomplishment of the service in episode 7 still exists, and that just happened.
Hmm.
And they pulled it together, and she was in charge, and they ended up going with her coke ribs, and they were a hit. And
Yeah.
like, okay, maybe that guy wasn't the Michelin star guy, but he loved the coke ribs. Other people loved them, and so
Yeah.
on and so forth, and everything else. You know what I mean? So then learning that the restaurant has gotten the stars, all right, yeah, if you think back and say, oh, well, that was when Carmi was in charge and it was Carmi's menu, yeah, maybe that would undermine a little, but would you really let it if you were Sid in her position? I mean, she was still working there. She was still a part of everything. She was still,
Yeah.
supposed to be Carmi's partner at that
Yeah.
point, so I would
I
expect
think
take it as more a collective achievement, you know,
great.
that
Okay,
she was
this
a
is
part of.
exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, since I wrote that and we published it, I have thought a lot about it and have landed on the same place that whether it was the service where the Michelin Raider was there or the service in episode 7, they always, Sid Carmi and everyone did it as a team. They all earned it as a team. And so there wasn't anyone who had a less important or more important role in that. They all earned it. And so yeah, I think Sid likely lands there, and knows that now her role, as what little I know about this, she now knows her role is to maintain that. And how hard it is to do that. So now she has a real job in front of her, but she knows she can do it because she has the right people with her.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could theoretically aim for a third one, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I tried to look into this a little bit along the lines of like, is it possible to get two stars at once? And like, I guess it is, and I
Yeah.
don't worry about it too much. But yeah, I mean, I think overall, and the fact that this means, um, I presume that the restaurant can keep going. We're not going to close down and all of that, and then you know, yeah, I think Sid's arc overall concludes pretty well, because she came into this as a fan of Carmi, really,
Right.
wanting to work with him and so on. If you think about their dynamic in terms of where we land with her character, maybe one of the bigger moments was in the earlier episode, maybe it was episode 6 even, in that, because I think we talked about it last week when Carmi says, like the difference is I would have screamed at everyone else, and you came out of the alley to scream.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that Sid at this point has gotten the kind of confidence that she needs to be the head chef of the Bear, and that's where she
Yes.
lands. And I
Yep.
think all that works pretty well.
I think that's right.
All right, so you wanted to do this, or rank the seasons. You want to go first? You want me to go first? Or you want to put it on our show sheet?
I'll go first. I think that for me, the one I would rank one first and last are the easiest ones. For me, that would be I'm going to start with season 2, and then at the end, I'm going to have season 4, and then between that, it's going to be I think 2, 1. I think it's going to be 2, 1, 5, 3, 4.
Oh wow. Okay, interesting. Interesting. Um, Now I haven't rewatched all of this recently. Maybe you
Yeah,
have more
nor have
than
I.
but I'm working more from memory, and then there are certain ways in which the season 3 and 4 run together a little bit. Seasons 4 and 5 run together a little bit, except I just watched season 5.
Yeah.
But um, yeah, I was thinking about this after you put it on our sheet before we started recording, and I think I'm going to go 2. So I'm going to agree.
Okay.
Season 2 was what I'm saying is the best season.
Okay.
And then I believe you had season 1 as the second best season,
Yes.
and we're still in agreement.
Okay.
But then I think I'm going to go 3, 4, 5.
Oh, interesting. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So you this fifth season you rank it last, huh?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, maybe if I rewatch the whole thing, I'll change my mind on that. But it just relates to some of the things I was getting at last time we recorded it. I was going to say last week. I guess it was technically last week. It was like 3 days ago. Um, about the first 6 episodes of season 5. You know, some of the stuff I said there about the structure of it, my complaints about the little breaks and the first 3 episodes and the music. And I mean, overall, I guess just like you feel like episode 5, I'm sorry, season 5, it was almost like one long episode and then an epilogue. If you want to put, again, I
Yeah.
push back a little bit about the idea that
Yep.
episode 8 is an epilogue, but one through 7, it's just like they all run together. Okay.
Yeah.
And this is something I've thought about a lot, and I don't know if I'll ever get around to actually writing this article. It's been percolating in my mind for like 3 or 4 years at least. But the difference between kinds of shows along these lines, like how much is the episode an episode as opposed to a portion of content.
Yeah.
And so that would be the biggest reason I'm putting season 5 last is I feel like these episodes weren't episodes for the most part. Whereas, and look, I put Gary before season 5 too. We left that out. And so with season 4, I guess I'd have to double check, but I think we still had some. Speaking of Catherine Van Honor and Dunk, she's the one who coined departure episode to refer to this. Um, I think we still had some of those, didn't we, in
We
season
did.
4?
We had the
So
wedding. Yep.
yeah, and so even if I can see the complaint in season 4 a bit about you know the show smelling its own farts or whatever a little bit. Um, if season 5 was an attempt to correct that, I feel like it's an overcorrection because when I look back, my most favorite episodes of The Bear are, ice chips, napkins,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
forks, fishes.
Yep.
Were all those season 2? Anyway, but like things along those lines when they did kind of like dial in. So even like I don't remember the name of what was the one that focused on Sid. I think that was more recently. That might
Yes.
have been in season 4. Um,
Actually, that was last season with her niece. Yeah.
yeah. So the fact that season 5 was just kind of like a stream of content culminating in one service,
Yeah.
and there was just too much facts. So
Hmm.
it ends up being the lowest ranked in my mind.
Interesting. Yeah. No. Hey, that's why we do this so we can yeah.
And
I don't know. I just like that was five went somewhere. I felt that 4
yeah,
did a lot of tread in the water. And to your point, they sort of pat themselves on the back a lot and just thought that yeah, 5 may be the best piece of evidence for releasing this show as a binge. We've always complained that they did this, but 5 was probably best served that way. Would have been weird
yeah.
to do it otherwise. So whether you like that or don't like that may factor into your opinion. But yeah, just interesting people's impressions about these. I think universally 1 and 2 are considered to be sort of god tier, and then it's sort of what do you feel about the rest?
Yeah, but it's sort of precisely to my point in a certain way. I could spin it this way, and it's like, yeah, okay, 5's well suited to a binge, whereas we've been complaining about previous seasons that they aren't. So if
Yeah,
5 is, it's because it's not the same show anymore.
yeah, yeah,
Structurally, it doesn't feel the same, and I prefer
yeah,
what it was before. And I don't know, look, I'm not saying season 5 is bad. I want to make that clear to everyone. Just because I ranked it
right.
at the lowest, I would also rank season 5 of The Wire as the worst season of The Wire. And it was one of the greatest shows ever in my mind, notwithstanding that. Maybe it would have been better if it after season 4, but regardless, season 5 of The Wire is fine. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
Regardless,
sad it's over. No more bear.
yeah, man. Yeah. There's something I'm sure. We have a spin-off series. I don't know. I am really curious though to see what
Oh,
I'm really curious to see though what Christopher Storer gets into next because at least I think this was kind of
yeah,
the first thing or like the breakout thing. And so what
I
kind of
think so.
arc might he be
Yeah.
on as a creative behind the scenes? So be curious to see where that goes. All right, thanks as always for listening to the podcast. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. If so, please do leave a good rating, review, all that good stuff. If you're on YouTube, hit that thumbs up. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. We greatly appreciate it. Be sure to check out TVObscast.com, where you can find written work on all sorts of TV shows. Ryan's written on The Bear, and there's stuff on the previous seasons and all of that, and other shows. So check it out, poke around a bit. If you want to follow us on social media, search for TV Obsessive and you should find us. And as for the podcast, we're going to be back on Friday to talk about the first episode of Silo Season 3. That's July 3rd. To let you know, it will be maybe kind of abbreviated, or we're just primarily focusing on the first episode of Silo, which comes out on Friday. But keep an eye out for that. We'll continue on with Silo week to week after that. And yeah, we'll see you then.
See you next time.